Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our webinar series on Facebook as a research tool. We are particularly delighted today to actually welcome the data and transparency team from Meta to tell us more about the academic partnerships and the data available directly from Meta to use for us as researchers. So we have three people here that will talk about this topic today. We have Christina Fan, Carlos Ahumada, and Annique Wong to cover this topic. As we have done in previous sessions, we will give them the floor for about 45 minutes to cover the topics of the session. And then we have some time at the end for Q&A. If you have questions in the meantime while they're talking, please use the Q&A function to just post your questions here. I asked the Meta team, they would be really happy to kind of keep an eye on things, to maybe answer questions along the way, to kind of, clarify questions and so on. But we will also have some time in the end to maybe have a more general discussion, because this is obviously an opportunity for us as researchers to learn more about all the opportunities we might have to work with Meta directly in our research. Welcome, team. We're really excited to have you. So I will just give the floor to you and then come back to the Q&A. So over to you.
Of course. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's really lovely to be here, and we're grateful to have this opportunity to speak with all of the researchers and research community that's on the call today. Just like Anya said, we'll definitely be talking about the introduction to our team. Also, what are some of the data sets and products, of course, that are available for researchers at Meta. And of course, we definitely want to save some time for the end at questions. So like I mentioned, we are Meta's data and transparency team. I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. There are a lot of teams at Meta, so we want to help give you a little bit more information about who we are and what we do at the company. Like I said as well, there are a few different sub-teams within data and transparency, so we'll talk about the products and data sets that are there. And just as I mentioned as well, we'll save some time at the end for question and answer. Your speakers today, of course, you have myself, Christina Fan from the Academic Partnerships team, Annique Wong also from the Academic Partnerships team, and Carlos Ahumada from the Data for Good team. I'll let them introduce themselves when it's their turn to speak, but I've been with the company for almost 7 years now. I recently joined the Academic Partnerships team, so it's been a very, very exciting world for me to learn about. There's definitely no limit to the amount of information and the very interesting topics that our research community is studying. So definitely look forward to meeting more of you, and thank you in advance for your patience with me while I learn more about this space and the work that you're doing. So with that, let's go ahead and get started, and I can tell you a little bit more about the data and transparency team. So we're actually a fairly new team within Meta, and we've recently brought together multiple efforts across the company into one single team for a single approach where we can really think about what the vision for data sharing and transparency is. One thing I can certainly note is that because there are so many teams that are coming together, we know that it can be difficult to navigate the various products and data sets that are available. So that is exactly why we want to take opportunities like today to help give you some more information about how to navigate this, and also what are the opportunities that are available. Meta technologies have billions of people around the world and billions of data points. So we want to think about what the right approaches are for us to make that data available to you and understand what researchers really care about, as well as the tools and ways in which the data can be provided to them. So a little bit more about the Academic Partnerships team. We launched in March of 2021, so that was just last year. And our team specifically serves the independent academic researcher community. So for independent researchers external to Meta, we have many programs, data sets, and products that we provide to enable this independent academic research. And the way that our team specifically supports researchers is helping partners through their onboarding and data access setup. As I mentioned before, we're aware that some of these processes can feel long and complicated, and we want to help support you through that. So we have a whole team staff to help you with those processes. We're also here to help promote the researcher and product dialogues. As I mentioned before, I'm quickly trying to get up to speed about all the different projects and topics that are out there in our research community. And you're really delivering a lot of very valuable outcomes and research outputs that are, of course, very important to our product teams too. So we're thinking about what are the right ways for us to connect you with our internal teams and make sure that that feedback makes it to our internal teams. We also want to support our partners through product trainings and any sort of escalations you might have around getting access to the data or having questions about the data. So setting up more programs, trainings, office hours, and support so that you have plenty of opportunities to do that. Finally, we want to help you meet other researchers in your community and set up collaborative opportunities for you to learn about what other researchers are studying or finding and making sure that you have opportunities to connect with them and collaborate them down the line. Our FORT team stands for Facebook Open Research and Transparency. And this product team actually specifically works on supporting research by sharing privacy protected data, releasing analysis tools for the academic community, and collaborating on long-term projects. You'll learn more about these FORT data sets and products when Annique presents next. So she'll definitely be walking you through to the various data sets and products that we've made available through the FORT team. And finally, we have the Data for Good team that has also come underneath the wing of data and transparency. The Data for Good team empowers partners, including governments, academics, researchers, and NGOs, with also privacy preserving data that helps strengthen communities and advances social issues. And some fun facts that we have about the Data for Good team is that we have over 500 partners in 70 countries, dozens of projects that are active and growing. And the team truly wants to focus on positive impact, health issues, crisis response, economic development, and climate change. We have Carlos on the team who will be presenting on this down the road, so he can definitely give you a lot more detail about that. Without further ado, I'd love to hand it over to my colleague Annique, who will walk you through the FORT datasets and products. Annique.
Thank you so much, Christina, and thank you everyone for having us today. So just a quick intro that Christina promised you all. I joined Meta only a few months ago, and prior to that I worked in the ed tech space. But I was also a researcher myself at the Oxford Internet Institute, where I researched digital inequality in the UK. It's been very exciting to join Meta at this time, especially the data and transparency team, and we really hope to work with some of you in the audience in the future. So I'll begin with our suite of ad transparency tools and products that academic researchers can use to study ads that run on Meta technologies. So the first is the ad library, which is a tool where you can get information about and search for active and inactive ads that are on Meta technologies, including Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, or through Meta's audience network. And you can filter ads by country, impression, the platform it was on, and also keyword search. And on active ads, you can also see when the ad started running, what platform it was on, and other information about the advertiser itself. We have a specific suite of ads in the ad library that are specifically pertaining to social issues, elections, or politics. And those have additional information, including the range of money spent on the ad, demographic information. You can see the percent of people by age and gender that had an impression on the ad, and the location, amongst other information. So really interesting granular information for potential research. And that filter will return results of both active and inactive ads that have been on the platform for 7 years from the date it was first reviewed. And in addition to the ad library, we also have the ad library report. And that's a weekly report about social issues, electoral, or political ads in a specific country for a given time period. And similarly, the report will contain information about how much advertisers are spending, the total number of ads each advertiser has, popular terms, and the top advertiser in each country. We also have widgets, spending tracker, and embeddable widgets that allow you to do your own comparison as well. So for the ad library and the ad library report, anyone with or without a Facebook account can access that and explore the ad details themselves. As for the ad library API, That allows for analysis of ads related to social issues, elections, or politics from countries where the ad library is live, which includes over 100 countries, including Brazil, Canada, the EU, India, Israel, Ukraine, UK, and the United States. And the results returned from the API include ad performance data, total impressions of an ad, demographical data. But in order to use the ad library API, you have to be in a country where the ad library API is available, and you must have a Facebook account. And the process is that you'll first have your identity and location confirmed, and then create a Meta developer account to get access to the API itself. Christina, if you want to go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the next group of products and data sets I'll be speaking about are exclusively hosted on the Fort Researcher platform. And these data sets and products require you to be a university affiliated academic researcher in order to apply for access to them. So the Fort Researcher platform is a specific secure way for academic researchers to access privacy protected Facebook and Instagram data. It runs on a modified version of Jupyter Hub and supports multiple programming languages, including SQL, Python, and R. It was built with validated privacy and security protections and penetration tested internally and externally. Some of the way that the platform was designed affects the ability to download certain data, but this is a mechanism designed to ensure that the data is only being used to conduct academic research. And the platform is governed by two publicly available legal agreements called the RDA and the RPA, the Research Data Agreement and the Research Participation Agreement. And you would sign either depending on the sensitivity of the data set that you are trying to access. And just for your knowledge, the RDA is signed by Meta, the PIs of the project and their collaborators, and also by their university. The RDA provides independence for researchers and privacy protection for Meta users' data. We don't pre-approve research for publication, but the RDA does allow an opportunity for us to review for any personal and confidential information. And the RPA is signed by Meta, the PIs, and collaborators of your research project. Great. So besides the ad library tools that I started with, we also provide election-related ad data sets to study the impact of Facebook's products on elections. And in February 2021, Meta announced it would make targeting information for more than 1.65 million social issues, electoral, and political ads available to academic researchers for the first time. So the first data set that they've offered is the ad targeting data set. And this contains the targeting logic of all the social issue, electoral, and political ads that were run from August 3rd, 2020 through November 3rd, 2020. And this targeting information includes location, demographics of people who saw the ad, interests of the people advertisers want to reach, as well as consumer behavior, such as prior purchases and device usage. And the second is the ad library data set. And that just includes the ad library data. And we allow that to be available on the researcher platform so that you can do analysis on both the targeting information as well as the general details of the ads themselves. And in order to get access to these data sets, you first apply for access on the Facebook website, and then if approved, Meta will reach out to you to sign the RDA and then verify your identification. So this next data set is the URL shares data set. It includes differentially private individual level counts of the number of people who viewed, clicked, liked, commented, shared, or reacted to any URL for any URL with at least 100 public shares on the Facebook platform, starting January 1st, 2017, up to and including February 28, 2021. And we actually have a data refresh coming this month, so the data will be even more recent. Counts are aggregated at the level of country, year, month, age, bracket, gender, and for US users, political page affinity. And this data set is very exciting because it was designed to allow researchers to study the distribution of URLs on Facebook and how users interacted with them. I did mention that it is protected by differential privacy, which is a privacy preserving technology that adds enough noise to the data to provide a guarantee that no significant additional information can be learned from the individuals in the data set beyond what is already available from any external public source. This means that no one can learn anything significant about the individuals from the data set, but it's still valuable because researchers can still use the data to uncover broad time series or group level trends and relationships of interest. And then to get access to this data set, you first have to apply through Social Science One. It's a third party channel partner we use to maintain the independence of researchers. And then once your RFP is approved by Social Science One, Meta will then reach out to you about the RDA and verify your identification. And researchers are onboarded once a quarter. And then their last exciting plug about URL shares is that for this specific data set, we have something called First Friday. And it's a community event we host for our URL shares researchers. And researchers and meta engineers who work on the data set attend this call. And it's a place for true independent discourse and collaboration where researchers present their ongoing and published work and provide feedback to our research scientists who directly create the data set. The Researcher API is also another very exciting product as it was specifically designed for academic needs. It equips academics to conduct longitudinal research across all public forums, which include Facebook pages, groups, posts, and events in the US and select EU countries. The Researcher API endpoints allows for researchers to get aggregated insights on these public forums, access to raw anonymized data, and then also the ability to keyword search. Right now, we and also one last thing is currently in order to use the API, you must have the ability to analyze data in Python, but our team is working to expand to include more programming languages such as R. And right now to get access, we've invited a small group of academics to test this product and provide feedback so we can iterate and improve on it before launching it to a broader group of researchers. The Researcher API is still in early stage development, but we've provided you this link that you can follow to get updates for when we do expand access. And the types of research that we hope the Researcher API can enable include natural language processing, content and discourse analysis, as well as information visualization. And then Forward is currently working to build a lot of exciting new data sets and tools for academic research purposes. The one I'll highlight today is called Survey Insights, which is a tool that allows survey researchers to connect consented individual level Facebook and Instagram data to their existing survey data. It's a really exciting product that is currently being piloted with a few early partners, including ANES, the American National Election Studies. We're definitely interested in potential use cases, so we'd welcome input into how this type of tool could be used for your innovative survey research on the impact of social media platforms on the world and society more broadly. And then I just wanted to highlight that we work with a range of universities and teams, including the NYU SysMap team. They analyzed URL shares to describe how and by which categories of US users use different types of news. This specific team focused on articles from low credibility news publishers. And they actually also presented at a recent First Friday. So that was super exciting. We also work with Hazel Kwan's team at Arizona State University. And her study investigated the dynamics of gun control movement discourse on Facebook, specifically in the context of the 2018 March of Our Lives. And then the last thing I'll call out is Anatoly Gru's team at the Ryerson University Social Media Lab. They did very current research on what's happening in the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and they actually created a dashboard to track misinformation. And we're working closely with their team to see how their research insights might inform some of the work that we do internally. And then just to summarize what I've spoken about, you must be a university affiliate academic researcher in order to get access to the FORT data sets and products that I had mentioned, excluding the ad library tools. And then this is a breakdown of the application processes and what legal agreements you'll have to sign. But if you have any other questions, please reach out to openresearch@fb.com and we'll be happy to answer them. And of course, at the Q&A session later. But with that, I'm going to pass it on to Carlos to speak a little bit about the Data for Good data sets and products.
Thank you, Annique, and thank you all for the opportunity to share today with you a little bit more of what we do here at Data for Good. My name is Carlos Ahumada, and I'm Public Policy Manager in Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Latin America. I'm in charge of our partnerships here in the program. So I'm going to share with you a little bit more of what we do. If we can move forward, perfect, thank you. Data for Good was a program that started in 2017 with just one tool and a few partners. And now after 4 years, more than four years, as Christina was mentioning at the beginning, we have more than 500 partners working in 70 countries in dozens of projects with the different tools that we have created. Our first collaboration, and just a fun fact also on Data for Good, our first collaboration with the university happened in 2018 with the University of Tokyo, who utilized our population density map to understand mobility in Mozambique, to do some studies around urban and transportation and planning. So what are the tools that we offer? We build privacy-preserving tools to assist during humanitarian emergencies and to support global development by informing policymaking processes around the world. While before we were trying to focus much more into humanitarian emergencies, we're now moving into a new era in Data for Good to proactively support governments and researchers in policymaking research and work. So we have three different kinds of tools. The first one is maps. You can see our tools as grouped in three main buckets. The first one is maps, the second one is surveys, and the third one is insights. Maps, we have maps, as I was saying, on population density, on mobility, on how different two different geographical areas are connected between them based on Facebook friendship ties. We have maps on poverty and relative wealth, etc. On surveys, we conduct global surveys on COVID-19. For example, it has been very useful for researchers and governments around the world to help inform their COVID-19 response plans. But we also have very important surveys on the health and status of the entrepreneurship environment through our small business surveys, and also our climate change opinion survey, which last year was fielded in 30 countries, and this year will be fielded in more than 115. This survey measures the knowledge and behavior of people around climate change and sustainability practices. And finally, we have Insights, which is a program that is only directed to nonprofits and NGOs, but I'm just going to briefly mention what it does. It helps them to identify which are the best performing digital campaigns to make across their points and help support them in communicating more effectively with their targeted audiences. So if we can move to the next slides, please. So how do we offer the different tools? Our tools can be seen as again, like I think into two buckets. The first one is the publicly available tools that we have. Everybody can access them directly through the humanitarian data exchange portal of the United Nations. They are free to use. They do not require any license, data license agreement, and they're open to the public and including governments and researchers, of course. Then we have the controlled access tools. These set of tools are also privacy preserving. They are also free to use, but in this case, they would require a data license agreement with us, just because we want to make sure that the data and the tools are used with the purpose with which they were created. They are shared through our Meta's Partners Portal. So once you apply, we onboard you to our Partners Portal, and they're only available to NGOs, academics, and researchers. And just a final note to mention that all Data for Good tools are privacy preserving and comply with data protection legislation around the world. So they're safe to use by governments and academics. Now I'm going to share with you some of the examples of the maps that we have, just to spark some interest. I'm not going to go very deep into the methodology. Everything is very well documented. You can access directly to how they were created, and you can also contact us if you have any questions. This is more like to spark interest and showcase what we have. So next slide, please. Thank you. So our most, probably one of the most popular products that we have is the high resolution settlement layer. This is one of the world's most accurate population density maps that there is available at the moment. It has an accuracy of 30 square meters, and it contains breakdowns by age and gender. It is based only on census data, official census data coming from the countries. And it has population estimations up to 2020. These population estimations were made by the University of Columbia. So the way this map was built is that we bought commercially available satellite imagery. We trained a machine learning algorithm to identify where in those areas of 30 square meters we identify a structure, so a potential area in which people might be living. And then we took national census data, made estimations up to 2020, and distributed the people among the structures that our algorithm identified. So this is how you arrive to one of the most accurate population density maps in the world. And again, it's important to say that it does not contain any Facebook users' data. If we can move to the next slide, please. We know that when we are working with researchers and governments, it's very important to understand not only how the data was collected, but how accurate it is. So we have made some validations of our population density maps with other widely used population maps, such as Landscan, DEMED, and WorldPop. And ours perform particularly well compared to those state-of-the-art population maps, particularly when you are speaking about rural areas. So again, this is all well documented, and you can visit our methodology and get more information on the validation that we do on our maps and tools. Next slide, please. The next map that I want to show you, and of course, this is not a comprehensive list of all the maps that we have and the tools, just like I pick randomly the ones that I think would be more interesting for this audience. The second one is the movement range maps. These have been widely used by governments in the context of COVID-19. What these maps do is that they measure the percentage of people that stay put or that move during the day in areas of 600 square meters. So this was very important to understand, for example, the compliance with lockdown measure. And it was also used by university and researchers to do modeling on predictions on the spread of the virus in different areas across the world. The third map that I want to show you is the one that we have on screen right now. It's the Social Connectness Index. The Social Connectness Index measure how digitally connected are two geographical areas between them based on Facebook friendship ties, okay? So here you see how well connected is Madrid to the rest of Europe, right? And we have the Social Connectness Index at national level. So you can see how Spain, for example, is connected to other countries around the world, but also how sub-administrative areas within Spain are connected to other sub-administrative areas across the world. Why this is important? Well, the Social Connectness Index has been used by researchers as a proxy to understand trade, for example, and also to understand flows of information and knowledge transfer. Also, it has been widely used to understand migration, and they are being currently used, for example, in the current crisis in Ukraine, to kind of predict where people are going to be moving and where they're going to be looking for shelter. So this is the Social Connectness Index, and I'm happy to expand a little bit more in the Q&A or in our bilateral conversations that might occur after this presentation. If we can go to the next slide, please. This one is one of my favorite maps because it combines traditional with non-traditional data to understand wealth within countries. So basically what it does is that it measures in areas how wealthy or how poor is an area of 2.5 square kilometers compared to an area of the same size within that same country. Okay, so here in the image, you see the squares. Each square represents an area of 2.5 square kilometers. The more purple the square is, the poorer the area is relatively to other areas of the same size within that country. And the more orange, the wealthier this area is. And we start seeing some patterns already here. For example, this is an image of Peru, and you see that the capital, Lima, is of course much more wealthy than the rest of more rural areas within Peru. We also see that those areas that are connected through a road are wealthier comparatively to other areas that are less connected. So as I was saying, this is using traditional and non-traditional data. Traditional data meaning ground truth surveys, survey data produced by the United States Agency for Development, and non-traditional data meaning the data that we collect on the number of mobile devices that we see in the ground, the type of operating system that we identify within those mobile devices, etc. If we can move to the next slide, please. And here is exactly what I was talking about. This is how our relative wealth index is composed, the different variable that we use as input. So we use road density, elevation, slope, precipitation, the total population, and the variables that we see here with the hashtag are the variables that are data that we collect here at Meta. So it's the number of cell towers that we identify in that area of 2.5 square kilometers, the number of Wi-Fi access points, the number of mobile devices, and whether it is Android or an iOS. And finally, you see here an arrow on satellite imagery because we use also machine learning to identify how complex is the structure or are the structures that we identify in that area. And the reason behind is that the more complex a structure is, the more developed probably that area is, right? And we use some principal components algorithm just to simplify the different characteristics of the structures that we identify. So if we can move to the next slide, please. And I'm going to go very quickly into the surveys that we have. As I was saying, one of the most important surveys that we have is the Global State of Small Business Survey. This is a survey that we conduct quarterly with the World Bank and the OECD. And they aim to reflect how healthy is the entrepreneurship environment, what are the opportunities and challenges that small businesses are facing currently, and how their sales are being developed, how much they rely on digital sales or in-person sales, and so on. And we do this conducting a survey among the small businesses that advertise on Facebook. So this is more than 200 million small businesses advertised currently on Facebook. Of course, we do not survey all of them, but we take national samples, and we arrive to very, very insightful results from my perspective. If we can move to the next slide, please. Then we have the COVID-19 Trends and Impact Survey. And as I was saying, this has been crucial for governments to understand the actual current status of the COVID-19, for example, vaccination acceptance, but also to understand how symptoms have been evolving, because people have the opportunities to self-report whether they are feeling certain symptoms of flu or more COVID-19 symptoms related. The vaccination acceptance, for example, also has to do with where people are obtaining information from. If they are obtaining information from experts, from government officials, from other articles or media, and this survey also reflects that information flow. If we can go to the next slide, please. And this is again one of the one of the surveys that I'm most excited about this year. This is the Climate Change Opinion Survey, which measures the knowledge and the knowledge gaps, the behavior and trends around climate change and sustainability across the world. I think that this is one of a kind survey because it measures actual behavior and knowledge and opinions of people. And this is something that we conduct annually with Yale University. As I was saying at the beginning of the presentation, this survey was conducted in the past years in around 30 countries, and now we are increasing our scope into more than 115. And here you see an example, for example, of how we visualize the data that we obtain. And it says like how strong international support is for the Paris Agreement. And we see the difference between countries. And these cross-country analysis might be very valuable for researchers and also to inform policy work. If we can go to the next slide, please. Before I move quickly into the academic collaboration, just a note on the surveys. You as academic researchers have the opportunity to access not only the country level aggregated data for the surveys, which is publicly available, but also to the microdata. So you can access microdata for Climate Change Opinion Survey, for Global State of Small Business Surveys, for COVID-19, which I understand might be very valuable for you because you might be doing some modeling, right? And when you're doing modeling, microdata might be very, very useful. So just to mention that you can have access to this kind of data. And quickly, just to mention our academic collaboration in Europe, we have collaborated, for example, with the London School of Economics, which have used the Social Connectness Index as part of a model to assess the quality of life in Germany. We also have collaborated very closely with the University of Catalonia, which was the leading source of analysis on mobility data for the European Commission during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the reports were delivered weekly to the policymakers in the EU. We have also collaborated with the Mercator Research Center and other institutions using Facebook movement range maps, the one that I said that measures how people were moving during the day in areas of 600 square meters, to analyze the impact on cycling traffic, health, and mobility of provisional bicycle infrastructure in 106 European cities. And finally, just as another example, we have plenty of collaborations with universities across the world, but just one final example that I want to highlight here is the collaboration that we have done with the Max Planck Institute, which used the population density maps to develop a region-specific population model to estimate the impact that interventions like social distancing, contact tracing, and curfews have in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. And I think now we can pass into the resources, Christina, if you want.
Great, that sounds wonderful. Thank you both, Annique and Carlos, for those very detailed overviews of all the different products and data sets. I've seen a lot of very good questions come through, so we'll jump to that very shortly. But we wanted to leave you with a place to go to learn more about everything else that we just reviewed today. So please visit research.facebook.com/data to learn more about any of these data sets. You can also learn more about the application processes and even begin the application processes by visiting that website as well. And just like Annique mentioned too, you can also always contact us at openresearch@fb.com. And the last thing I just want to close with again is that, as I mentioned before, we're a very newly forming and coming together team. We have a long way to go, and we really want to learn from you and understand what we could be doing better. So all of your questions are extremely important to us, all of your feedback, and just thank you for your patience and collaboration with us to figure out how we can do this better and keep growing this program. And so with that, I'll go ahead and jump into the Q&A. Andrea, I don't know if you want to help point out questions first, or if we should just take them in order, whatever works best.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks so much. This was incredibly helpful to kind of get an overview of all the possibilities of doing research. Maybe we can just go through the questions, kind of one by one as they came in, and who you think kind of would be best able to answer. I also scribbled down quite a few questions, so if we still have time, maybe we can go also through some of those. So maybe we can start. Kind of that was, I think, just a general question. Like you mentioned in the beginning that you had that you're looking for kind of also building kind of bridges, like all the opportunities you offer at Meta, and kind of doing collaborative research. And you mentioned some fantastic, really interesting projects here. How what's the forum here? Like, how does this work? Maybe you can say a bit more about this. So that refers to Daniel's question about kind of how to really work together. What's the connection here? And also how to connect to other researchers, right? To kind of learn from each other and maybe start collaborations and so on.
So maybe I can start this off, and then Carlos and Annique, if there's anything you want to add, please feel free. But as I mentioned, so the teams that you're talking to right now, Data for Good, and also the academic partnerships team, we're facilitating independent academic research. So again, providing data to external researchers to conduct their own research. That said, of course, there are many research internal collaborations that happen as well. There's actually a sister team that we work with who manages those partnerships, and they're the academic relations team. If you go to research.facebook.com, there's actually a lot of resources there about how to apply for the proposals and all the different programs that they have there. We're also happy to connect you with the team so that we can help you find some of these opportunities. And just like Annique said too, we host some of these community events like First Fridays, where we want to connect researchers to each other as well, because there are also, of course, so many opportunities that exist within our community broadly as well. So those are just some ideas that come to mind. Carlos and Annique, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add there.
I would just like to add regarding the collaborative point that Anja mentioned on the Data for Good side. We do believe that using data, it has to do a lot with the ecosystem. So we are always proactively promoting the development of this ecosystem, connecting researchers around the world working on similar projects. If you apply to be onboarded as a partner, you will be user of a platform that is being used by researchers around the world, and they're constantly posing questions and sharing insights on the tool, on the insights on the tools and the data that they obtain. So it's a very feedback approach there. So it's very important for us to develop the ecosystem. And the ecosystem, it also includes connecting researchers with government and government agencies. So we have actually many projects around the world in which researchers are actually helping with the research governments to achieve their policy goals. So that's a quick note on the collaborative approach that we have at Data for Good.
Great. Maybe just a quick follow-up because it's related. Diego asked, kind of how the kind of First Friday, kind of workshops or events work, and whether this is something that is it like a newsletter where people can kind of sign up, to see whether there's anything interesting for them that they might want to join, or how does it work? Yeah, just to kind of stay on top of what's happening and follow events also.
Sure, yeah. Annique, I'll let you take this one since you're our host of First Fridays.
Sure. Yeah. So currently, First Friday is only open to our URL shares partners. So you do have to have access to the data set already to attend this community event. But since we're a new team, we are actively trying to think of new ways where we can start engaging people in and out of our research partner, BOB, to Book of Business, to learn more about our products. We're also creating a newsletter as well to be externally facing, so we can share that with this group once it's live.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea, because I could imagine that there's quite a few researchers who are really just exploring, who first kind of need to understand what the opportunities are to develop research ideas, and then kind of become involved and start working with the data. So I think if you can open it up to researchers to at least attend, like what we're doing here, but that's more like information. So, I think that would be extremely helpful. And, given that we have a network already in place with an extended mailing list, please, let us know once you have things that are more open and, where you invite people just to join for information events and so on. And we can then just circulate that, and whoever is interested, can come. Yeah. Great. There was maybe it's just a clarification question by Stefan asking. Annique, you mentioned that it would be kind of only university affiliated scholars who have access to FORD, but does that exclude people who work at non-university research institutions? So you mentioned Max Planck, that's a non-university, right? So maybe you can just clarify, because Stefan works on not at a university but a research institute, so I think he was a bit disappointed there, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a good call out, and Christina, please feel free to jump in after I give my response. But so for the RDA specifically, that specific legal agreement requires a university signatory, which is why I've called out the university affiliation requirement. But our teams understand the value of our data to all researchers, even beyond academia. Right now, the academic sort of requirement is in part one due to the fact that we are trying to community build specifically with the academic community. We know the value that your research has to inform our products and our policies, but it's also a privacy sort of mechanism as well. And we are also working internally to figure out a way to open this access to people who aren't university affiliated but do academic research as well. I would suggest you actually email the email, that address that we provide, and perhaps we can work some sort of agreement out as well.
Thanks, Annique.
Thanks.
Yes. Oh, I was
That's
just
great.
going to add as well that we're certainly interested in figuring out how we can expand. And it's this age-old question that I think we've discussed with a lot of our community before, is how do you define a researcher, and how do you find the right criteria to define a researcher? And I think at least one thing is universally agreed, is that that's a really difficult question to answer. But we definitely want to keep figuring out what are our options here and what are the right ways to evaluate that. So again, please send us your ideas, and we'd love to help figure something out together.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, I can see that university is an easy categorization, but there's of course other types of publicly funded researchers that would probably really benefit from this. Maybe just also related to this, Sylvia's point about the RDA. Maybe you can just go over this again to kind of clarify, especially how also the ad library access works, and whether this would require RDA or not.
Yeah, I can take this, and sorry for any confusion. So the ad library and the ad library report can be accessed by anyone with or without a Facebook account. And the ad library API, you simply just need a Facebook account and some verification processes on our end so that you can get access to the API. The only legal agreements you have to sign is if you access data on the FORT researcher platform. So things like the URL shares data set, the researcher API, and the ad targeting data set that I mentioned as well. So if you have access to the API, you don't need to worry about not having signed the RDA.
Great. Maybe Annique, you also want to take Marie-Lou's questions that are quite specific also about kind of the ads. And yeah, there was just some more specific question. Maybe just want to go through that.
Sure. So I'll take it. So in terms of how far back in time the ad library goes, so the ad library has any ad that's currently active on our platforms. And then for inactive ads that relate to the social issues, election, or politics, they go back up to 7 years from the date that it first was seen. And in terms of the classification, Facebook/Meta has a sort of categorization of this that we can send you that link where you can read more about it. In terms of impression information, on our table schema, there is a column where you can see gender. And then as for the insight on ad performance, which is engagement, this is sort of something that we're exploring more. We know the value that having more granular digital trace data has on research. I don't believe that we provide engagement on the user side when it comes to ads, but we do have like impression data and and demographic information about the percent of age and gender of the people who saw the data, the ad itself. So hopefully that helps.
Maybe just kind of following up from this, like what is the coverage really here? Because it looked like that it looked like time-wise it was quite restricted, but also most of your examples were like based on the US. But is this really available for all countries, or what's the coverage here in general? Maybe.
So for the ad library specifically, it's any ad on the platform.
Okay, amazing.
But the ad library is live in certain countries, 100 countries, I believe, and I listed out some of them. And then I think the small sampling of countries you saw on the research spotlight that I mentioned, that is specific to the data sets on the Fort platform. So like I said, Researcher API is US and certain EU countries. URL shares is pretty encompassing internationally. We can provide you a list of that as well.
Okay.
But generally our goal is to provide as much diversity in terms of geography when it comes to data.
Yeah, no, because for me, this is really one of the big advantages being a comparative researcher. We also have quite a few people working on migration, and the global reach of the platforms is such an advantage. Of course, there's a lot of research happening in the US. It's a big country. It has a lot of researchers. So I understand that sometimes there's a bit of a focus on the US, but it is fantastic that you provide these resources for so many countries around the globe. Annette's point is also on ads, but kind of on the other side, not in kind of analyzing ads, but running ads. And so this is also something that, for example, iCode and I are doing. And we often try to use ads to recruit research participants into our survey. And of course, the problem is sampling, and it's very difficult to get good samples of what we want. Do you have any kind of experiences, suggestions of how can we make our sampling more representative to kind of get people to take our surveys that come from all walks of life, rather than kind of zooming in on a specific group, kind of young educated men or something like this, which is not what we often want. Any tips from your side or experiences?
I'm not sure if someone else wants to chime in here, Annique, if you have ideas, but I would say that this is probably something that's left to some of the other experts on our team who aren't able to join the call. Maybe something that would be a good future topic even as well. So unfortunately, I certainly don't have the answer to this question, but Annique, Carlos, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add.
No, I think what you said, like maybe other experts in the call may reply.
Apologies.
I mean, tiny bit of self-promotion. iCode and I covered that topic in, I think, was that session 2, iCode, right?
Yes, our second
okay.
session.
So at least our experience. We shared that in session 2 of the previous series. So Anette, you might just want to watch our video again, and yeah, we also try to cover that a bit in the handbook that we wrote. But of course, if you have insights from Meta, then that would be really interesting as well. Yeah, I don't know who wants to take Sea's point. That seems to be very specific. About maybe, I don't know, is that best for?
Sure, I'm reading through it now. There are a few questions. So let's see. Is the more detailed data available to researchers on the transparency reports of government requests of user data and or the content restriction based on local law? So yes, definitely a very specific question. I would say that I currently am not aware of reports or data sets that are directly related to this, but again, it might be something that's better suited for someone else on our team to answer. Carlos, Annique, I don't know if you have more information about this.
Not on the Fort side. We don't have anything more beyond the data that I had mentioned, but we do really appreciate research inputs like this. We're curious to see the kinds of data that you would like to see us provide. So again, please feel free to email us the use cases and any of your ideas.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Annique. Also on the Data for Good side, we always appreciate an open conversation with researchers. If you have any additional ideas or use cases, we're always trying to make it as useful as possible for you.
Yes, and use cases not just in data topic, but also to, I'm going to say your name wrong, Stefan's point, sorry, about who we're giving access to as well. If we can show that there is interest, we can build a better argument for expanding.
Yeah. And then Julia's point is about the AB tool. I don't know whether anyone is who would be best placed to answer that. So that's doing some randomized assignment for RCTs. That of course is a really nice way of also working with the platform, of exposing people to different treatments and so on. So I don't know who would be best able to answer this. Is there something to better understand? Because sometimes working with Facebook, it feels a bit like a black box, right? I mean, the big algorithm of how do you distribute ads and so on, right? But anything that we can maybe, understand this a bit better, and as she puts it, look, can't get it under the hood.
So Annique, I don't know if you want to speak more to this. I'm not sure if this is related at all to the Survey Insights tools too that we're, okay, no, I see a head shake. So it sounds like, again, something that we might need to reroute to a specific team. Okay. But Annique and Carlos, don't know if you have anything to add there.
From my side, sorry, go Annique.
I was just going to say it's not a product that's under our suite, but we can help you figure out who the best person to get in touch with is about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is absolutely fine, because obviously there's a lot going on, and also what we're seeing is that people are using the platforms already in many different ways, and obviously you can't cover everything. But what I'm taking from what you're saying here is, please contact us, we will help you. And I think that's really an important message for us as researchers, to take you up on that opportunity. Now there's some faces, we know a bit better the team structure and how you work. And I would really just encourage everyone, listening in and being part of this webinar, to just get in touch with the different teams. And it sounds like that you really are very open to communicating with researchers to make sure that we use the platforms in a way that it helps our research, which can have hopefully then also implications for the wider world and so on, because it's an incredible resource, and there's a lot of data there. So please feel encouraged to contact them. We, reached out, and maybe just because there was one point that I was actually quite interested in myself. So maybe just, kind of one final question by me, and maybe I could, if you have one. But I was also quite intrigued about the surveys that are part of the, Data for Good. And I was just wondering, Carlos, maybe you can say a bit more about how this works. Is it that, kind of you just run these surveys? You just kind of, you as a team, you decide like what are the big topics, and then how would the service actually be run on the platform? Is it that, kind of you randomly, kind of select people to see some questions? Maybe you can just talk a bit more about this. And then also, is there an opportunity for researchers to maybe, kind of approach you and design some projects, some surveys with you?
Yeah, those are very good questions that we always receive on the survey side. So yeah, we plan the surveys like unilaterally in that sense, but trying to make an assessment on what might make most impact around the world. That's why we are focusing on small medium business, climate change, COVID-19, also gender dynamics, and we're always trying to evolve and create new ones. And that's why it's important to be in constant communication, because while we run them directly, we always appreciate the input from academics, researchers, and partners to add questions to the surveys that we have, and also to design new ones, right? So I encourage also the participants to get in touch with us. We run the service on the platform, but for example, whenever we have these kind of sensitive topics such as COVID-19, which has to do with health, we only select the sample and redirect the users that want to take the survey to the servers of a couple of universities, the University of Maryland being one of them, in which they host the data and then process the data, and then they share the insights with everybody. And final point in terms of how representative of a service are, we're always working a lot in diminishing biases and also applying correct weighting to make it as reflective of population as possible.
Yeah, and I guess you have similar issues that we have in recruiting through Facebook, and then directing to like some survey platform and so on. I don't know whether you had also some questions that you
I just want to ask about like some of these products and data sets require approval from Facebook, right? What's the time frame? Like, what should researchers expect? How much time do they need to expect to pass to hear from you, to hear from Facebook to get approval? Weeks, months, days? Yeah, that kind of an insight would be helpful if there are any standards there.
So I can briefly touch on this. It obviously varies case by case, of course, but as Annique mentioned, for example, we have two major agreements that guard our data sets, at least on the Fort side. So the RPA is for the low sensitivity data sets, and therefore has a simpler application process where within a few weeks or less, we see most researchers be able to go through that process. The RDA, which is the research data agreement, that one is what guards the higher sensitivity data sets. And as such, we have some more steps to complete that process. What we find is the longest step of that process is finding your university signatory. We understand that navigating your legal offices can always be a challenge. And so that is one thing that we would say in terms of trying to expedite the process. The sooner that you can identify that person or let us help you identify that person, that's exactly what our partnerships team is here to do, is to help explain anything, answer questions, help you find the right person, or see if someone else from your university has had the university signatory signed before. So we're trying to streamline as much of that as possible and clean it up, but we understand that it can be difficult sometimes. So again, partnerships is here to help.
On the Data for Good side, it's also a very simple process, and researchers can expect an answer from us like within days. And then it requires like for the academic institution to sign the data license agreement, which is the point that Christina was referring to, which depends more on you than on us, but it's a very simple process.
Yeah, that's the essence of how universities work. So, it's like one of the challenges, like trying to find your way around. Anyway, I think we probably leave it here. We're already a tiny bit over, but this was absolutely fascinating. Thanks so much for sharing all this. I mean, I hope, people go away and, just get ideas, because as academics, it's all about kind of having innovative ideas. And sometimes this just requires knowing what the opportunities are. And I think this was extremely helpful. It would be great if you could maybe share your slides. We will probably put them on the website then as well. And we will put that video on the website, and hopefully we can have you back in the future to talk about more products as you develop as a team as well, now that you also see kind of where people are going with their questions, and maybe some collaborations coming out of this session, which would be fantastic. So thanks so much. And just for everyone who's still listening in, we have another session this week on Thursday with Annette and Anna, talking about using Facebook for hard to reach groups, and they're sharing their experience in the field, and kind of key lessons, challenges, and so on. So very much looking forward to that session as well. We're back to 3 o'clock UK time then, as we don't have to reach the West Coast as now. Thanks so much for everyone for participating and your fantastic questions as always. And so see you hopefully on Thursday. So thank you very much.
Thank you so